Homeless man's life changes after he unknowingly helps a city's icon. Real Good Samaritans don't put themselves on the line expecting a reward. They just want to do good by their fellow man, pay a little something forward. Of course, that doesn't mean the grateful people they lend a hand to won't try and return the favor. Before we move on, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notifications bell for new amazing videos. While looking to turn his life around, this Missourian jumped at the chance to rescue strangers from disaster. He didn't realize, however, that those he'd stuck his neck out for were powerful people with a lot of sway in his community. Dave Cochran was barely scraping by, but most Kansas City residents barely noticed him at all. If it weren't for the company of his girlfriend and their dog, Dave would have been completely alone in the world. He lived in his old Chevrolet. The arrangement didn't offer much comfort to begin with, but things got worse when someone smashed a couple of his windows. He had to tape trash bags over the gaps, which didn't do much to keep the winter air at bay. There was irony in his shattered windows, he knew. See, back in his drug-using days, he picked up a criminal record for breaking into cars. But in more recent years, he'd promised himself he'd leave crime and narcotics in the dust. He'd turn himself around. One weekend in January 2019, Dave bundled up in anticipation of a snowstorm. He planned on waiting out the blizzard in his beat-up car, but a turn of events on a nearby street brought him out into the cold. Despite the perilous conditions, quite a few drivers were still out and about, and a number of them seemed ill-prepared. Dave saw cars sliding and fishtailing all over the roads. Some vehicles even got stuck. Alarmed, Dave's first instinct was to hop out and help those people. He worried, however, that the sight of a homeless stranger approaching them would likely make them panic more. Was getting involved really worth the trouble? Realizing these drivers needed a hand more than anything else, Dave rushed out into the cold. He greeted the endangered drivers with a smile and pushed their cars through slushy patches or dug out the wheels when necessary. After already sending quite a few vehicles on their way, Dave spotted one BMW that had really gotten into trouble. Caught in a snowbank, the car needed more than a push to break free. Luckily, Dave reassured the driver he knew exactly what to do. The driver, who said he was late for a football game, they weren't far from the Kansas City Chiefs stadium, watched as Dave attached cables from his Chevrolet to the BMW. With a rev of the engine, his truck yanked the trapped automobile back onto the road. Afterwards, the stranger, who introduced himself as Jeff, thanked Dave for the assist. He tried to give Dave a few bucks, but the Good Samaritan wouldn't even think about it. When he wished Jeff a speedy trip to the stadium, Dave got a major bombshell dropped on him. Jeff wouldn't be watching the football game that afternoon. He'd be playing in it. This anonymous driver revealed he was actually Jeff Allen, an offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. They had a playoff game against the Indianapolis Colts that afternoon. If not for Dave's intervention, Jeff never would have reached Arrowhead Stadium. Fortunately, he got to the locker room just in time for warm-ups. Although his focus was on the game, Jeff couldn't help but keep Dave in his thoughts. Jeff and his teammates manhandled the Colts that day, and he wanted to give credit to the secret MVP of the game. The football pro, however, had no idea how to reach Dave again. He shared his story on social media, hoping Kansas City could help him. Within just a few days, Chiefs fans helped Jeff track down his snow savior. The athlete took the opportunity to personally thank Dave and gift him a huge reward: 2 tickets to that weekend's AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots. Though he was excited, Jeff admitted he wasn't familiar with being in a packed stadium. "I am nervous as all get out. I've never been here. I've never been to a preseason game or a regular season. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," he shared. The thrill of attending such a big event where nobody was looking at Dave with pity or fear was electrifying, though, very sadly, Patriots squeaked past the Chiefs in overtime. Nevertheless, Dave saw that evening as a total victory. It helped him really believe that he could turn his life around and reconnect with the world that left him behind. And thanks to Jeff's social media activity, Dave had more surprises in store. Chiefs fans set up a GoFundMe page for the down-on-his-luck hero. In addition to paying for new car windows, it covered a 5-night hotel stay for Dave and his girlfriend. He hadn't slept in a warm bed for quite a long time. Inspired by his selflessness, some local companies also donated clothes and other products to help Dave get back on his feet. For the first time in years, he could truly think about restarting his career and rebuilding his life. The community's support really overwhelmed Dave. He never expected so much. He just wanted to assist a few of his neighbors. Dave promised to keep giving back to Kansas City, and there's no doubt he'll have a home there for as long as he lives. Our world is always in need of heroes like Dave. This could not be more apparent just a few years earlier when a storm was brewing in Texas. Torrential downpours ripped through the state and a tornado touched down near Dallas. Emily and Philip Ochiltree tore down the rain-soaked highway in an SUV, fleeing to a shelter. In the backseat, their kids, 18-month-old Addie and 4-month-old Marshall, were strapped into their car seats. So they, like their parents, see Emily on the right, were helpless when the truck hydroplaned on the wet roads. Philip, left, lost control of the vehicle, and the family's black Chevrolet flipped on its roof into floodwaters raging roadside like a river. Now, upside down, the water whipped past the doors and windows. Philip and Emily tried opening the partially submerged doors, but the fearsome flood prevented them from doing so. Worse, water leaked into the truck's cabin. The family panicked. It was pitch black in the car, 21-year-old Emily said, and you can't see anything. You can't find your kids. You panic. Completely trapped and blind, she banged on the roof, yelled, and screamed for help. What Philip and Emily didn't know, however, was that outside in the rain, a passerby named Thomas Mitchell, saw the upside-down truck. He didn't know if anyone was inside, but he stopped to check anyway. Thomas was not the only concerned passerby, though. As tornado sirens wailed in the distance, telling Texans to find safety fast, 5 other men, now 6 in total, braved the tornado to inspect the flipped vehicle. When one of the Good Samaritans, Corey Prox, heard screaming coming from inside the truck, he went into panic mode. He smashed the car's windows, revealing to the helpers the terrified family trapped inside. Philip and Emily had been scrambling to save their kids, but under the stress and pressure, failed to do so. The helpers tried pulling their parents from the wreck, but Emily had another plan for them. "Give Addie and Marshall life before you try to help me," Emily told the men. She thought, "I'm fine, I am an adult, I can manage. I will figure out a way to get out of this vehicle. They cannot." The heroic men complied. Philip and Emily scrambled through the broken window to find dry land. Feeling utterly helpless, the parents watched and Thomas filmed the scene as the rescuers fought floodwaters to save Marshall and Addie. In the car, meanwhile, one rescuer called for a knife to cut the kids free from their seats. Just moments later, a rescuer emerged from the watery wreckage, carrying baby Marshall. "But what about Addie?" "I got a baby," one rescuer shouted. "Call 911. He held Addie, still strapped in her car seat. The 18-month-old had turned a bluish gray and stopped breathing. Thomas then pocketed the phone and ran to perform CPR. As luck would have it, though, one of the men who stopped to help was Jamie Martinez, a former firefighter in Guatemala. Though he worked as a musician at the time of the accident, he never forgot his rescue training. "It just kicks in," he later said. He administered CPR to the struggling little girl and kept her alive long enough to pass her off to first responders just minutes later. Medics then took Addie and Marshall to the hospital. Marshall only spent 1 day at Children's Medical Center in Dallas. Addie, on the other hand, fought for her life for a bit longer. A few days later, Philip posted an update about little Addie on social media. "I just want everyone to know she is definitely on the road to recovery," Philip wrote. "I want to thank each and every one of y'all who have prayed and donated everything to help us." The father had a special message for the 6 rescuers. "Life comes at you in the blink of an eye," Philip wrote. "I can't thank you all enough who came into the water and saved my children. You're a blessing. Thank you all so much." CPR hero Jamie also visited the family in the hospital, where he shared a tearful embrace with Emily. "I'm really so happy you are okay," he told her, "and the babies too." Did you like the story? Check out our channel for more.